Hi there, hope you're well. Today we're looking at 5 ways you can spice up your grooves. If you're a beginner drummer and you're just starting to get the hang of playing 4/4 rock and pop grooves, these are 5 things that you can start doing right now to make your grooves sound better. Number 1 is right hand variations. If you're stuck in the habit of just playing eighth notes all the time on the hi-hat or the ride, try using different patterns and different note values. Practice kick and snare patterns that you already know and are already comfortable with, but try using different patterns using quarter notes, eighth notes, sixteenths, offbeat eighth notes, and other variations of those note values. This will also help to develop your coordination and independence, as well as giving you a wider range of ideas that you can use. Number 2 is drags and ghost notes. Now these are both simple ways to embellish your snare drum patterns and make the snare pattern sound more interesting. Adding extra snare notes to the groove can really start to add more movement and texture. Try adding drags into your grooves, particularly going into beats 1 and 3 where the kick would play the stronger notes. Adding ghost notes can really start to make a groove feel more groovy. As you start to fill in some of the notes that are left between the kick and snare, there's a whole load of variations you can try. But make sure you play these notes with intention, and if you're repeating a phrase, try and place the same ghost notes in the same place each time to make it sound like you mean to do it. And every note is there for a reason. You can also experiment with the dynamics of these ghost notes. Don't always have to be super quiet. There might be an extra snare you throw in that's just as loud as the backbeat or somewhere in between. Number 3 is snare displacement. Most of the time when we play rock and pop grooves, we play the snare on beats 2 and 4 on the backbeat. And most of the time this is the best thing to do. But now and again a groove needs to feel less steady, And by moving the snare slightly away from the 2 or the 4, this can give the groove a whole different feel. Try moving the snare forward or back 1/16th note on either beat 2 or 4, or even both. Now you might not even want to do this in every bar. Just throwing in a displaced snare every 2, 4 or 8 bars, depending on how long the phrase is that you're playing. A displaced snare at the end of that phrase can add that surprise element at the end of the phrase. Number 4 is opening the hi-hat. Try opening the hi-hat on certain beats of the bar to create more interest. Experiment with this, again using the same groove but changing which beat you open the hi-hat on. This again is a good way to develop your coordination and independence, as your left foot now has to interact with everything else that's going on. And number 5 is using longer phrases. If you're stuck in a rut of just playing the same 1 bar phrase over and over, try making longer phrases just by taking 2 grooves that you know and play them in sequence. Start really simple with a 2 bar progression. Then start to play 4 bar phrases. This could still just contain the 2 different grooves that you used before, but in a different form. You could use a A-A-A-B form where you play the same groove 3 times and just change the 4th to create a 4 bar phrase. Or you could put them in a different order and play A-B-B-A. Just experiment with this and try things in different forms. And just to tie everything from this video into one, start to use all of the ideas in this video to make longer phrases. It doesn't have to be just changing the kick pattern. You can use your right hand variations, the open hi-hats, the drags and the ghost notes, all at certain points in a 2 or 4 bar phrase. I always try and think of the phrases that I'm using on the drums in the same way that you would use language. So using grammar and punctuation. If you play a crash cymbal on the start of a phrase, that's like using a capital letter. It's signaling that this is the beginning of the phrase. Using something more subtle like an open hi-hat or a drag at the end of a phrase, that's like using a comma. You're using some musical punctuation to try and break up the phrases that you're playing. In the same way, when you use a fill at the end of a phrase, that's like using an exclamation mark or a question mark. And it's a way to signal that this particular phrase is ending and you're moving on to a new section. This is all stuff to get creative with in your own way. As well as practicing these ideas, try and identify them when you're listening to music. Can you identify a 2 or a 4 bar phrase within a song? If you hear another drummer play an open hi-hat or a drag or a ghost note in a groove, try and understand why they did that and how it impacts the flow of the song. The key goal in all of this is to make songs sound better when you play them. And having a better understanding of when you should and shouldn't use these things requires a better understanding of music in general, not just on a drumming level. As always, there's a link in the description to a free PDF download of all the exercises in this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.